Welcome viewers, I'm Dr. Tarang Kapoor and we are discussing an introduction to applied ethics in part 2 of this lecture. We are attempting here to define applied ethics. In the last lecture, we discussed a probable definition of applied ethics, and then we also showed the limitations of a very broad definition, and we tried to work with a more narrow definition wherein we can safeguard it against the kind of criticisms the broader definition is open to. And also we had discussed approaches to understand the moral content in the area of applied ethics. These approaches are internalism, externalism, mixed internalism and externalism. Further, we understood top-down approach to understand the problems of method and justification. The problem of method and justification is a very pertinent problem in the area of applied ethics, and now I'm going to elaborate on the second and the third approach to understand the methods and justification. So in the last lecture, we did the top-down model and considered the limitations of that model. Now let us look into the bottom-up models. These models focus on the process of how we make practical decisions rather than mere application of general principles. So the first model was talking about this autonomous rigid principles, which are from the top, as were to say, applied to each and every instance which is lying there at the bottom of issues. However, in the bottoms-up approach, we are dealing with the question of how we can make practical decisions and how we can incorporate these experiences, these instances which we face in our day-to-day life, what we can learn, what information we can gain from these instances and apply to the how of decision making. The method emphasizes that our moral beliefs are structured and moral decisions are made, on the one hand, by using existing social agreements and practices. On the other hand, by a thorough analysis of new exemplary comparative cases. So we have to analyze the latest information coming in, see the examples, compare the cases, and then we reach a kind of agreement in our practices. Also, structuring a moral belief is done by drawing analogies from prior practices and several other learnings from the domain of experiences. This system focuses on the use of existing social agreements and practices, insight producing novel cases, comparative case analysis as our starting point, as our ground towards making a moral decision. So here is the understanding of bottom to top, and that's why it is called bottom-up approach. These navigate an array of methodologies like pluralism, casuistry, pragmatism, particularism, among others. Many possible situations arise with conflicting interpretations and analogies. It is possible that a particular feature of a moral principle proves the rightness of an action in one case, but may be counted against the rightness of the same case in another case. May be counted or countered actually against the rightness of the same action in a very different or another case. So this opens up the possibility of ultimate sense of plurality, which is argued by moral particularists. There are possibilities, however, which indicate that the bottoms-up approach model are prejudiced, they are biased, they are based on irrelevant analogies, hasty generalizations at times, populism in terms of popular opinions, and several other factors. Analogies and comparisons as methods do not provide us any claim to objectivity. Another important challenge is that although these methods provide us with a tool of thought, but these accounts present to us a method without any content, as they lack in their initial moral underpinnings. This brings us to a third approach to understanding the problem of method and justification in applied ethics, and this is a combination rather of the two approaches which have gone by before, and this is termed as coherentialism. Instead of a top-down model or a bottom-up approach, which are now regarded as insufficient in the area of applied ethics judgment understanding, there is another version of models, and these are known as reflective equilibrium or coherence theory. Now, reflective equilibrium is a word used by John Rawls. He has given an account of reflective equilibrium in his book, A Theory of Justice, 1971. When a system of ethics is developed, we should start with considering the broadest possible set of moral judgments and make a provisional set of principles by reflecting on those broader set of judgments. So it's about providing a provisional principle based on our set of moral judgments. Reflective equilibrium, and I'm quoting Boschum here, quote, reflective equilibrium views investigation in ethics and theory construction as a reflective testing of moral principles, theoretical postulates, and other relevant moral beliefs to make them as coherent as possible, unquote. So basically, we are involved in consistent, continuous reflective testing. We are involved in and engaged in understanding what makes these moral principles and what are the relevant beliefs to make them as coherent principles. When we make considered judgments, we present moral beliefs without a bias, and they are always liable to revision for this reason. Reflective equilibrium aims to match and adjust considered judgments to maintain coherence with the premises of our most general moral commitments. We begin with an account of sound judgments of moral rightness and wrongness, and then go on to construct a general account and a specific account that is consistent with paradigm judgments. After this, we test the resultant actions to see if they offer us any incoherent results. Any incoherent results call for either readjustments or giving them up or renewing the entire process of this reflective reasoning. This adjustment of pruning is a continuous process, as it is never possible to achieve a completely stable equilibrium. We may take several case studies to understand the application of the concept. Let us take examples of two issues to understand these complexities. Case number 1 I have taken, wherein if we look up the discourse on the justification of universal human rights. We observe there that the foundationalists believe that human nature is homogeneous. On the other hand, anti-foundationalists and relativists argue that the nature of human being entails humanness, but this humanness takes different forms in different societies as cultural beliefs and practices vary accordingly. To consider only the homogeneous nature of human beings by ignoring the plurality of inhuman society would render the argument incomplete. When we approach the issue at hand from the perspective of coherentialism, neither a top-down model nor a bottom-up model can work to provide us with reasonable justification for concepts of human rights. Instead, we are required to develop an objective view and to reconcile the differences between relativism and moral universalism. So we can neither go with relativism, that is bottoms up, and neither we can go with an absolute concept, which is the top down model. We have to somehow hit a middle ground, and coherentialism, that's why, provides us a better as a theory, it grounds us in a better way of moral judgment making. Now let us take case 2 of surrogate motherhood. Surrogate motherhood is a result of relatively new technological advances in the field of reproductive medicine that presents many personal, social, legal, ethical, medical challenges to us. This is a complex practice with its risks and benefits. Even if it does not become commercially successful, it has definitely given rise to multifaceted questions like, what is our understanding of family? What is parenthood? Is parenthood determined by gestational connection, or it is genetic in nature? Is the rearing role of a mother more important than the gestational or genetic role? Moral arguments against surrogate motherhood include risking harm to the resulting children, risk to intended parents and surrogate mother and her family. There are several arguments put forward for surrogate motherhood that reject all the arguments against surrogacy. They argue that there is no harm to the child, surrogate's family, labor disparity involved in legal arguments, or surrogacy. The legalization of surrogacy would require consideration of a balanced point of view, which would certainly depend on developing a coherent perspective. A balanced perspective should neither be dominated by the critics nor the supporters, but it should reject their respective biases. The process of achieving moral coherence or consensus does not come to an end or perfection. Any moral framework which is deemed adequate for applied ethics should not be seen as a finished product. Any applied ethics issue is always in need of continual adjustment by reflective equilibrium. The open-endedness of this model is visible in its never-ending search for coherence and for novel situations that challenge our current moral frameworks. One problem with coherentialism, however, is that achieving a coherence of norms can never provide a ground for justification, because the body of substantive judgments and principles which cohere may not be absolutely satisfactory. So we start with considered judgments which are morally justified. However, at times, even the considered judgments might not turn out to be reliable themselves. So, if we are able to achieve a coherence of norms, still that particular achievement might not be able to help us in making any substantive judgment, because that particular substantive judgment might still not be satisfactory, because there's always this open-endedness about any kind of consensus which is being achieved. The reason is that the persons, codes, or institutions on the basis of which these considered judgments have been made might not themselves be very reliable. There is no clarity as to what is the precise nature and scope of the method, because a philosopher who seeks coherence might be pursuing one or more of several different interests, like evaluating public policy, improving his or her personal set of beliefs, among others. It would be apt, for reasons mentioned above, that although applied ethics stimulates moral imagination, but applied theoretical discipline, applied theoretical distinction needs to be viewed with a lot of caution, because what is applied and what is theoretical, this particular distinction can itself be subjected to questioning. So we are moving now towards an analysis of these three theories and what are the conclusions we can gain from here. In order to understand the ethical theories and their implications in a better way, it is useful to consider theories in relation to practical issues. Each and every issue can be addressed from the point of view of different ethical theories. General theories should definitely be contextualized in the given situation, or else moral guidelines would be empty and ineffective. At times, there might be a need to specify what is meant by a broader or vague definition of a term for a particular context. So when we talk about a broad and a vague kind of distinction or a binary, it is important to tell us what is exactly meant by a particular term in a context. At the same time, narrowing the scope or general norms can also lead to moral disagreements. Disagreements can be about the scope, concepts, facts, genuine dilemmas, or even about norms and circumstances which are relevant. Parties may disagree on several dilemmatic situations, like whether euthanasia is acceptable, whether affirmative action is appropriate at all, whether capital punishment is morally tenable, and other such contentious decisions. The changing circumstances of urbanization, education, industrialization in the global world order show a continuous need to reassess our moral positioning. A foundational question can be raised with regard to whether applied ethics has a special moral content and distinct method even of justification. Applied ethics, when we see them, they analyze concepts, examine the hidden presumptions of moral opinions and theories, they offer criticisms and constructive accounts of the moral phenomena. But the question raised, and I reiterate the question, whether applied ethics can have a special moral content and distinct method of justification. Even this question, the foundational question itself, is an open question. They try to stimulate the moral imagination, promote analytic skills, weed out prejudice, emotion, misappropriate data, hegemony of ideas, authoritativeness, and the like. Differences between ethical theory and applied ethics are as apparent over content as apparent over method. Instead of analyzing moral theories in general terms such as good, rationality, ideals, virtues, applied ethicists have analyzed confidentiality, environmental responsibility, rights, various issues in medicinal practices like euthanasia, abortion, organ transplantation, surrogacy, confidentiality between doctors, nurses and others, and the reason is that the formal are seen to be the domain of normative ethicists and metaethicists. However, the latter, which is the issues which are faced by us on a daily basis in our day-to-day life, are seen to be issues which should be addressed by the applied ethicists. Moreover, applied ethics studies a variety of content, and the working knowledge of the field actually requires us to be having considerable empirical knowledge related to the historical context, economic situations, and the policies and laws which are evolved based on the social and the cultural milieu of a particular society. Principles in ethical theory are typically general guidelines that leave considerable room for judgment in specific cases, but applied ethics should advance concrete action guidelines that instruct human beings to act in ways that allow for more or less interpretation and discretion. Many scholars, therefore, are suspicious about the fact that whether ethical theory can play any role in cases of analysis of policy at all. Do philosophical theories ever have any practical role? While no one might doubt the importance of this subject matter, many people do not understand the nature of the subject itself. What is the nature of applied ethics when we call about it as a particular discipline which should be studied? However, before moving on to applied ethics, it is always advisable to attain any kind of conceptual clarity in and through understanding the relations in a particular contextualized setting. It serves the purpose of proving direction, giving guidance to human nature and action. In the process of fulfilling this purpose, we test moral principles in the context of real life. In the process of applying ethical principles, we open the sphere to question, deliberate, criticize, and revive these questions. However, many times there is a considered worry about the status of applied ethics, as it is quite unclear which method or which methodology can be used to justifying any given practice. In this lecture, we have discussed the relevance of applied ethics as a discipline. Applied ethics deals with practical normative challenges faced in our everyday interactions. In this sense, it can also be referred to as do-it-yourself DIY kind of an exercise in the modern language. Unlike traditional ethical theories, which are concerned with purely theoretical problems like criterion of rightness, concept of right and wrong, etc., applied ethics is devoted to the treatment of moral problems, practices and policies in personal and professional life in the fields of diverse variety of fields, I'm going to say, like technology, reproduction, governance, among others. In the contemporary world, various fields of applied ethics are studied as independent spheres, like business ethics, bioethics, professional ethics, social ethics, environmental ethics, distributive justice and human rights, among others. So, before putting an end to this lecture here, I have come with a list of references which you can go through to develop a better understanding and in-depth understanding about the subject matter. And this list involves a lot of examples, real-life situations faced in the field of professional as well as personal, and matters as diverse as matters from the medical field to the legal issues to the environment, and we have been speaking about it. So you can pick these references and enhance your knowledge. To end this lecture today, I'll say that it is important to deliberate on theoretical approaches, to strike a balanced viewpoint with respect to justification of their positions, and it is important that all the applied ethicists take due regard and due time and expertise to flesh out the normative ethical theories and the meta-ethical questions which are pertinent to understand those normative ethical theories. So the meta-ethical questions and normative ethical theoretical questions go before we arrive at the issues in applied ethics. So there is a kind of back and forth approach. There is a kind of coherential approach which is required to form a consensus when it comes to understand any theoretical formulation in terms of either content or justification of applied ethical issues. Then this lecture has discussed and has presented an analysis of the issues of moral context, methods and justifications in the domain of applied ethics. And these are the recommendations of references. So you may refer to these references. The primary article which I used for this presentation is also given in these references on number 2 here in this slide. You can also look into the encyclopedia entries on applied ethics, and Gert's definition I have taken from this article here on moral theory in applied ethics in 1984. And these are few compiled readers, edited books which you can refer to. And the last one is on ethical decision making in terms of cases and concepts. So this one makes us give several examples as case studies.